Thank you very much for all of you for coming out here today, and I agree with you, that brain tap, I used that this morning. Darren Ollian suggested it to me this morning, and it was awesome. So if I do suck today, I can blame brain tap. But anyway, yeah, today's talk, let's get the clicker here. So I started getting into biohacking some years ago, so I'm used to speaking at bodybuilding events. I'm not seeing that too many huge jacked up meatheads here today, so I will give you a little bit of a background about myself. When people do ask me, what do you do for a living? You know, maybe I'm sat by someone on a plane and they say, what do you do? I find it very difficult because I can't excel at anything. But I find if I do a lot of things, maybe collectively, I can excel at those things. So I like to keep myself busy, and because I've tried to keep myself so busy in the past, it eventually got me pretty sick, which led me to go down that biohacking route. And in doing so, I found that I come from an athletic background, that I've become a much better athlete for it, because I don't know if many of you know, when you're participating in a lot of athletic sports, you are creating a lot of inflammation. Now, inflammation in short dosages are very good. You want that hormetic response. You want to be in hormesis, but you don't want that. You don't want to be in it all the time. You don't want to be in it 24/7, because, as you know, that can lead to the onset of aging quite quickly. And when we see tests, either through telomeres or glycans, we see that athletes do age rather quickly. They may look fantastic. They've got six-pack abs. They look shredded, in shape all year round. However, when we look at their biological age, quite often they are older than their chronological age. So, you know, we want to figure out how to reverse that age. So I'm going to go into that a little bit later, because I have partnered with Glycan Age to do pilot studies through my clients after they saw my biological age reverse year after year. So my background is bodybuilding. Much like Ben Greenfield, who was speaking here before, he competed in bodybuilding. I was a much better bodybuilder than Ben, though. Much better. But he was a much better triathlete than I. So I was competing in bodybuilding for about 10 years, from 99 to 2009. But before that, I was racing motocross, again, for about 11 years. And it was a lot of injuries that put that sport to bed, basically. It was a spinal injury that kind of put that career to bed. And then, because my identity had become so attached to adrenaline, I just wanted adrenaline all the time. I started downhill mountain biking, did that for a couple of years. During that time, because I was seeking adrenaline, I got pretty deep into drugs, recreational drugs, and just drinking alcohol. Pretty much all the time, 4 days a week, 3 days a week, for about 5 years there. So I was quite experienced in that realm. And then I realized, okay, this is not the way to go. I was going to see a lot of specialists, chiropractors, massage therapists, osteopaths. Nobody could alleviate me of the pain that I'd succumbed to from my injuries of motocross. It wasn't until I saw a physio and started doing resistance training that alleviated me of the pain that I was dealing with in my back. And I was like, wow, this is like the Holy Grail. And when I started studying this, I found out that I was able to retain this content for once in my life, because I hated school. I didn't want any part of it. I started to retain this content, so I went to college and studied it for 3 years, and that's what led me down the bodybuilding rabbit hole. And I did that, like I said, for 10 years. Now, I thought that I was very healthy in doing so, but as we'll later find out, it definitely wasn't the way to go. So with those qualifications, I become a personal trainer. Thankfully, those qualifications were internationally recognized. I really needed to get away from my social circle that was taking me towards drugs and alcohol, not blaming that social circle. I just didn't have the willpower at that time. So those qualifications got me out of Wales, got me overseas, and I started a new life, basically. I got a gym franchise with my business partner, Jag Chima, here in India, of all places. And then, like I said, I failed at school, but I was working on my brain. So I remember reading Merriam-Webster's book on journalistic writing, teaching myself how to write, teaching myself how to take pictures as well. And I started getting a lot of work within magazines. I had contracts with Weeder Publications. I published my own magazine for a little while there. And then that led to me to get an editor-in-chief job at bodybuilding.com, which took me to Boise, Idaho, which has some of the cleanest air in Idaho than the entire world. So, that was absolutely phenomenal to get me there. And then started a supplement company called Caged and got a podcast. So I like to stay busy. But what happened, this is going back in 2011, I published a book. Jag flew me over to India for an event there to launch this book. That book got read by a celebrity there that he handed his copy to a celebrity over there, Bollywood client, who I gave a consultation to. I started training him. That got national attention in India. So then I stayed in India, and the demand was huge. So I started flying in other trainers from the UK, from the US, to take care of a lot of the Bollywood clients there. However, something ugly happened during my time in India. Even though I have fond memories, I still go back quite often. Obviously, we have a business there. But what happened to me there was I got mold toxicity. From the apartment that I was staying in Mumbai, I had mold toxicity. I had no idea what mold toxicity was, didn't even know it existed. All I knew that I was an arsehole to be around. I was getting about 3 hours of sleep a night, and I was using this anger that I had within me to be my advantage within bodybuilding. Like, I'd wake up angry, and I'm like, I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to out-train you. And that was just my mentality, not knowing who I was becoming or why. I just knew that I was becoming an angry person. First of all, I thought, is it because of the culture? Is it because people are staring at me because I look different? I'm tatted up, had dyed hair half the time. I go through midlife crises about every week, so usually have a different colored hair. But I just realized after a while, this isn't me. I would dread going to bed at night. It was the equivalent of going on like a 12-hour flight. They're not too good. That's what it was like every single night for me. I'd wake up after about 30 minutes, and I'm like, oh, it's time to get up. Oh, wow, it's only midnight. You know what I mean? And I would do that like every 30 minutes throughout the night. And I was exhausting every possibility. I had a lot of knowledge in supplementation, nutrition, and I was trying everything. I was even turning to medication, but that just made me feel bad, and I just knew it just wasn't the way to go. Now, it wasn't until I went to Dr. Spanaug's clinic in Oldsmar, Florida, where I had like 62 blood tests. I had urine tests, I had stool samples, saliva, hair follicle, you name it. I had every single test there. Now, the formulator from my supplement company, who I worked with at bodybuilder.com, suggested this gentleman, Dr. Spanaug. And then, when he gave me my symptoms, he told me exactly what my symptoms were without me telling him. I was floored. I was like, that's exactly me to a T. And he told me that I had mold toxicity. He deals with a lot of people with ALS, Alzheimer's, Lyme's disease, and I was astounded to see during the time that I was there, people would go in literally in a wheelchair, not able to tell the time, and they would go out walking, fully cognitive function. It was unbelievable. My before and afters were like, you're fat and now you're thin. This blew me away. So when he diagnosed me with mold toxicity and said that you'd likely got it from the apartment, because mold toxicity or mold spores can get into your system very quick, like a lipid or like a ketone, very quick. You can get it subcutaneously, you can get it through inhalation. I was getting it through inhalation. You can also get it in foods, as you probably know. You can get it in grains, you can get it in wines, you can get it in chocolates, more so in the US than you do in the UK, because the toxicity guidelines in the US are very broad, have a broad spectrum. However, I got it from the apartment. So I went through a detoxification protocol there. He would have kept me there for 6 months if he had his way. It's very expensive, by the way, so I don't know if he was getting some sort of a residual commission. However, I stayed there for 6 weeks and continued to go down that biohacking path and detoxification path by myself at home. And that's what really took me down the rabbit hole of biohacking. So as a bodybuilder, I thought, okay, I'm healthy. I'm getting in my macros. I'm eating my greens. I'm having my carbohydrates. I'm having the healthy fats, eating the first-class proteins. But I wasn't looking at the sources of those proteins, if it was grass-fed, farm-raised, or humane-raised, or wild-caught. I didn't care. Basically, I was like, I'll just get the nutrients in so I have the power and performance to get it out. Okay, I wasn't looking at anything else. So when I started studying, okay, this coffee could have mold. The grains that I could eat could have mold. The antibiotics in the food that I'm eating, not that's prescribed, is having an effect on my gut microbiome. I need to put all of this into check. And I started trying a few other things, and then I started quantifying these things. And as a result, which is weird, I was always dealing with inflammation in my body. When I say inflammation, like joint pain. And I just thought, well, that's part of the parcel because I'd competed for many years. I got second in the Natural World Bodybuilding Championships. That's why I said I'm better than Ben. And so I knew that, people around me is generally dealing with tendinitis, they're dealing with inflammation. Well, then it's going to be normal for me get it too. When I started going through this detoxification, and like I said, biohacking, I noticed that no longer I was dealing with the inflammation in my joints, even though I was training still just as hard. My body started to respond better. Number one, my sleep started to get better. Now I can sleep for 7-8 hours. I can quantify my sleep and get very good REM sleep. My deep last night was about an hour, 59 minutes. It's not the best, but it is so much better than what it was, okay? Now, obviously, we know if we recover, we perform, not just from a physical perspective, but from a performance perspective. And as a performance athlete, we obviously need to recover. Most of my clients that are performance athletes, I'm not trying to get them to do more, I'm trying to get them to do less and recover and focus on their recovery and just being mindful, being in the moment. When you're eating your meals, you're not distracted, you're not scrolling, you're actually being mindful. And much like you're trying to get a mind-muscle connection when you're training, you need to be connected when you're eating your food. So you're in that digestive state, that parasympathetic state. Most performance athletes are in a sympathetic state all the time. If I look at their cortisol levels, cortisol is always increased. If I get them to start tracking their HRV, it's usually tanked. It's usually very, very low. And they can't understand why they can't perform better, why they've hit plateaus. Well, this is usually the reason why. They're doing a little bit too much. And they're not focusing on the micronutrients, the nutrients, and obviously the possible toxicities that are in their body. So I always encourage clients, and I encourage you if you're not doing it already, I'm sure you are, you're a smart crowd, but you're quantifying, you're looking at your gut microbiome, you're looking at your blood panels, maybe your DNA tests, to ensure where you are is a perfect place for you to quantify your performance. A lot of the time it is down, it's through the floor. However, we try to train harder, we have more caffeine, we have more pre-workouts, thinking, God, I'm just being soft on myself today. I need to push harder, I need to toughen up. Chances are it's the opposite way around. You need to slow it down a little bit. So, anyway, Oldsmar, Florida. So, as I mentioned, sleep is king. So we have a lot of artificial light here, you know this. How many people, though, are exposed to their artificial light at nighttime? They're in their bed, they're scrolling on the phone, or even if they're not scrolling on their phone, they've got their phone by their head. It's not in airplane mode, it's there, and a lot of my clients will say, but I use it as my alarm clock. Well, get a friggin' alarm clock, Get an old school alarm clock. What's our alarm clock, like $10 off Amazon, a little Samsung, You don't need your phone in your room, because even when you are, like you're not maybe scrolling on your phone, maybe you're wearing your blue light blocking glasses, you're still getting those EMFs penetrating into your body that can raise your cortisol levels. It can possibly, if you're electrosensitive like myself, I am a sensitive little petal, then it can, if you quantify this, you can see that your HRV drops. So we did a quantification experiment when, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer is one of the world's leading building biologists. He came around our house and he checked our home for dirty electricity, for a lot of EMFs, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, the majority of the dirty electricity was in our bedroom. And quite often, you'll get exposed to more satellite signals the higher your house is as well. Or if you're staying in a hotel room, the higher you are, the more satellite signals that you're going to get coming through. So we had a lot of dirty electricity there. So we slept, or I slept, I think you slept in it for one night, I slept in it for several nights, in like a Faraday cage. It's like a single-man tent. And if you take your phone in there, then the signal goes. But we didn't sleep in there with the phone on, obviously. But then I was able to quantify my sleep, and you can't say that this is a placebo effect. I'm sleeping. But I looked at my data the next day, my sleep was so much better, and I was like, is this just a fluke? Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And my sleep data was so much better. And that's not me scrolling on the phone or anything like that. It's just blocking out the EMFs. And the way how I realized this initially is that we went to a festival in Las Vegas, is on the outskirts of Las Vegas. There were so many people there, there was no connection on people's phones because so many people were packed in there trying to use their phones at the same time. Then we went back to our hotel in Vegas, EMFs everywhere. When we left that festival, I felt like I had a hangover for about a week. I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? And a couple of other people that were with us felt the same way. And that's when I started looking at EMFs and trying to figure out ways on how to mitigate the damage. Like as I'm talking to you now, I'm not going to prove it. I'm wearing the EMF mitigating boxer shorts. When I'm flying, I'm wearing the Defender Shield blanket or the Blue Blocks blanket. I'm wearing a cap just to mitigate a lot of the damage because when you're on the plane, you're getting exposed to a lot of Wi-Fi. Everybody's on the phone when they're trying to land, and you're getting penetrated with that. And obviously, travel isn't forgiving for us anyway. But I don't deal with a lot of the jet lag when coming over from long distances because I do all these things to mitigate the damage. Of course, I'm hydrating. Sometimes I'm fasting and making sure that I earth myself as soon as I land so I can take in the negative eons of the new time zone that I've just been to, just again to allow me to recover. Because just because I've flown the other side of the world doesn't mean I'm not going to go to the gym that day or the following day. I need to perform because I travel a lot. A lot of athletes travel a lot, so a lot of my clients travel a lot. So I need to ensure that they're able to perform much better. So I'm looking at the fluid that they take in, the minerals that they take in. Are they blocking and are they mitigating the damage? So my wife didn't want me to wear this bum bag on stage, but I've got a mitigating bum bag here. Same with my phone case. I'm doing everything that I can, obviously, to help mitigate that damage. Can we block everything? No, we can't. We live in a normal environment. But can we mitigate some of the damage? Sure, we can. If we look at the statistics of what's happened around the world over the past, say, 30, 40 years, we see cancer going up. We see the onset of a lot of diseases and autoimmune diseases coming up in unbelievable percentages. Now, has our DNA changed over the last 30 years? No, it hasn't. But our environment has changed. Of course, our food supply, our water supply has changed. So we've got to do everything that we can to help mitigate that damage so we can perform better. This isn't all about longevity. Sure it is. That's part of the parcel. I want to make sure that I live to a very old age, but in very good health. But I want to ensure that I perform while I'm here. I have no qualms or signs of slowing down. Until I tear a muscle off because I go snowboarding or something like that. But hey, I can have stem cells to fix that now. But I obviously want to do whatever I can to help myself perform because it's mental therapy for me. The reason why I train is not because I want to get any bigger. I don't want to always have to flex my pecs as I get older. But I want to feel like I can, and I want to ensure that I have adventure as I'm getting older as well. Like how many people do you see sometimes in their 70s and they're bedbound, they're in a wheelchair, they can't do much? It's like, well, it's your choice to either heal your future or harm it. It's funny, we were having a conversation the other day where a lot of people will spend like a couple $100 or a couple £100, to go and get pissed up over a night, but ask them to spend a couple $100 on an IV or an NAD IV or something like that. That's way too expensive. It's like, but you'll spend so much on harming your future, but you won't spend that much on healing your future. It's only going to lead to regret. We don't want any regret. So taking care of your gut. So one of the things that I realized when I was at Dr. Spinal's clinic is that the gut microbiome was so important. He calls the gut the first brain, the primary brain, not the second brain like a lot of doctors do, the primary brain, because we get a lot of our hormonal response in there. You know, if you want, and we've noticed testosterone tanking over the years. Tanking, like I have some clients who are in their 20s that got testosterone of like 200. You know, it's like, what's happening? Shouldn't that be on someone, that's like in their 70s? Well, of course, if we are disrupting our gut microbiome, we're getting rid of our opportunist flora, and we've got gut dysbiosis, then of course we're not going to produce the hormones necessary to function correctly. And of course, if you're performing in any sort of strength-trained sport, you want good, adequate testosterone production. And obviously just a focus, just to be in good health. Your testosterone starts to decline, the universe says, well, this person is just not going to reproduce, we don't need him anymore, we'll kill him off. Okay, so we want to make sure that we have good testosterone for our longevity. So with the gut microbiome, I realized through my tests, and you can get great tests from companies like Viome, where you can see what your gut health looks like. So that's when I realized, okay, all this food that I'm eating as a bodybuilder 6 times a day, probably twice the amount as the average person, is causing me a lot of dysbiosis. So in doing that, I started to heal the gut, looking at the food that I was eating and what that food ate. So I realized, okay, it's eating a lot of antibiotics. The meats that I'm eating, the fish that I'm eating, I don't know if you've seen factory farmed fish. Basically, no pun intended, they're packed in like sardines, and they're feeding off their own feces. They've got lots of diseases, but they're fed with lots of antibiotics, so they don't get the disease and give you the disease. If you look at salmon, the factory farmed salmon isn't pink, they dye it pink because it doesn't have any of the astaxanthin in it, So you've got to look at these things and the sources of your food. Can't expect those people out there to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself and the responsibility of yourself. So I started going grass-fed, humane-raised, wild-caught. And, it doesn't matter if you're vegan or vegetarian, you want to go organic whenever possible. And, look after your gut microbiome, kimchi, sauerkraut, anything that's going to provide good probiotics. And obviously prebiotics is a great supplement company here. Optimise has a great probiotic. Caged, my supplement company, shameful plug, we have a probiotic, but that is more performance-based. It helps prolong your ATP. It's the only probiotic that has been proven, actually, to prolong ATP, adenosine triphosphate production. So that's perfect, but you want to make sure that you take care of this primary brain in your body, because if you continue to have an inflammatory response in your gut, continuously, not just here, there, and every now and again, that's okay, but if you continuously, that can lead to a chemical response in your brain. So obviously we're dealing, like I said, cancer's gone through the roof, testosterone decline has gone through the floor, but we're also seeing as well that chemical responders are possibly leading to mental disorders. That could be depression, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, and we've seen that increase as well. So that's why I always get my clients to take care of their gut microbiome. And then further from that, if they are dealing with any sort of mental disorders, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, so don't take my advice on this sincerely, but obviously cold therapy as well, hot and cold contrast therapy, making sure that you get into the shower or the ice bath, submerging your thyroid and your vagal nerve to take you from that sympathetic state into that parasympathetic state where you feel a little bit more calmer and you have emotional stability. And of course, finishing off with cold will give you more insulin sensitivity as well. So or insulin stabilization. So if you are a performance-based athlete and you want to stay in pretty good condition, you want to mobilize those fatty acids, but you want insulin sensitivity, you always want to finish with the cold as well. Caveat to this, so I've got a lot of clients or a lot of people that follow me and they do their ice bath straight after their workout. Bad idea. You want to separate it from your workout. You want that hormetic response. You want that inflammatory response from the workout. You don't want to blunt it. You're going to blunt it by having an ice bath or a cold shower directly following. So I wouldn't suggest that. Maybe do it before or several hours after. I like doing it before. I feel phenomenal. The only time that I do it directly after is if I'm preparing for an Ironman triathlon. I'm not really caring so much about muscle building and that hormetic response then. I just want to get rid of the inflammation, mostly in my lower body. So I'll just do a lower body submerging ice bath at that particular time. Being a bigger person, I'm not as big at the moment because I just had stem cells about 6 weeks ago, so I haven't really been training. But I put a lot of pressure on my knees preparing for Ironman triathlon or an ultramarathon or anything like that. So I'm constantly wanting to get rid of the inflammation. So that is the caveat when it comes to that. Now also, when it comes to the clean ingredients in your body, now not only just the food supply, but the fluid supply as well. Now, a lot of people drink tap water. There can be a lot of estrogenetics within the water supply, or estrogens. So you want to make sure that you also have clean water. I see AquaTrue is here. I don't know, I haven't really looked all around the expo, but I see they're here. I have a reverse osmosis water supply at home, and with a remineralizer. So that's the fluid that I drink the majority of the time. When I'm traveling, obviously, it's a little bit different. It's like bottled water half the time. I also, much like Ben mentioned before, I've got my hydrogen-rich water. Now, that is a perfect antioxidant that you can take around your workout. You usually want to stay away from antioxidants around your workout because, again, that can blunt the hormetic response that you want. So you don't want like a load of vitamin E or vitamin C or anything like that. But you can take the antioxidant in a form of hydrogen-rich water that will not blunt that hormetic response that you get post-workout, okay? And then measuring your HRV. I'm sure a lot of people here are wearing some type of wearable. Of course, I got the Oura Ring. Now, measuring your HRV to dictate your rest and recovery is something that I get all my athletes to, especially the endurance athletes. They think more and more is going to be better. Like their rest day is like, I'm going to go for a paltry 8-mile run instead of my usual 14 miles. You want to look at your heart rate variability before making that decision because sometimes you're flogging a dead horse, and a lot of the time I'll see injury come from people who are not recovering, especially in endurance. I see more injuries from my clients that have come to me from endurance-based sports as opposed to powerlifting or strength-based sports because they just think, oh, well, I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm okay. I don't really need to go and hit a PB in the gym, but I can go for a short run or cycle ride or swim or something like that. But they're overdoing, they're not allowing their body or their system, their CNS system, to recover, okay? Now, a blood glucose monitor, you probably saw Ben wearing one before. So I wore a blood glucose monitor for about a year. And what I noticed in doing so, I was able again to find the way to perform a lot better based on my blood sugar response. Now, we've all been told try to stay away from white rice, go for brown rice and stuff like that. I found that my insulin response was much more stable from white rice as opposed to brown rice. Sometimes I would get a spike from sweet potato as opposed to white potato. If I had obviously things like quick oats, not flavored, I noticed that I had a huge spike, but if I had rolled oats, it was nice and smooth, you know? Spikes are good in some responses as long as they come down. Like if you have an ice bath, you're going to have a spike. If you're going to have a sauna, you're going to have a spike. You do exercise, sometimes you have a spike. That's absolutely fine. But you want to make sure that those spikes come down pretty quick. Now, you can do so if you have like rice or something like that, you get a good spike, but maybe you follow it up with like a 20-minute walk. Like I remember when we were in India, we went and had sushi, and then we went for a walk, because I remember my blood sugar just went crazy. We went for a walk back to our hotel, blood sugar came straight back down. So that's another way that you can hack those blood sugar spikes. So a lot of the time, if I have clients that maybe work for themselves, or if they're at the office, if they have carbohydrates, then I'll get them to do some form of movement straight after that meal. If they're at the office, they can sit down and stand up maybe 50 times or go for a walk. If you're at home, some burpees, some kettlebell swings, or whatever. But that's how you can really biohack those spikes. And that's how I get a lot of my clients get in great shape really, really quick. If they're getting ready for a bodybuilding show, a photo shoot, or they're just obese, they've got a lot of weight to lose because otherwise they were pre-diabetic and they're about to go into they're about to become a diabetic, then these are the things that I'll do. Obviously, like I said, the ice bath can help mobilize those fatty acids and help with blood sugar stability, and the exercise post-workout, post-meal can help with that stability as well. But it's good to have a blood sugar monitor. You can have like the Dexcom, you've got the Libra. There's a few companies like Ultrahuman and NutriSense that do these blood sugar monitors now, and you don't need a doctor's prescription, which is phenomenal. May cost a little bit out of pocket, but it's a great way to quantify. And you can wear it for a few months, you can wear it for a year, or you can wear it indefinitely. And it's a great experiment that I do suggest, because then you can take that for the rest of your life. And then PEMF is something that I have my clients do for healing as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, the sunlight is very, very important. A lot of us biohackers, we look for shiny objects. What can I spend a lot of money on that will make me feel better? Because if I tell somebody, let's say if I've got a client that's got a lot of money and I tell them to spend $1,000 or maybe $30,000 on something, they'll happily do it. If I ask them to do something that's free, chances are they won't take it seriously. So how many of you have meditated? Put up your hands. How many of you meditate every day? There's a few, but a lot less, because it's difficult, but it's free. It's free. Now, we live in a world that we're constantly distracted, so we seek distraction. Okay, we're addicted to distraction, much like a lot of us get addicted to stress. You know, we feel good if we're going at it, and sometimes, you know, you get the old couple on the street that's always complaining about their neighbors. You know, they get addicted to it, much like we get addicted to the stress. So meditation, obviously, is very, very difficult, but sunlight is always there, and we take it for granted. Okay, we take it for granted. It is there. However, the sunlight has such an impact on how you feel. Obviously, if you're able to absorb vitamin D through the sun, through photobiomodulation, some people don't. You know, if you have your DNA test, much like myself, I don't absorb vitamin D through the sun, so I have to supplement high with D and K2. But it's a hormone. Vitamin D, yeah, they say it's a vitamin. It is, in fact, a hormone. And it can help upregulate your hormones in balance so much more just from getting sun. Of course, we're biohackers. We want to supplement with everything. We want to make it easier and convenient, but this is going to be the best way to do it. A lot of my athletes, and a lot of athletes, or a lot of people that are gym goers, they go to the gym and they just hit the Stairmaster for 30, 40 minutes, and that's good. I tell a lot of these people, get outside. You know, if you've hit a plateau, get outside. Don't worry about it. Take the stress out of it. A lot of people get stressed. They're on the Stairmaster after they've hit the gym, and they're like, oh, why am I losing fat? And they get even more stressed about it. Just relax. Just take it easy. Go out for a stroll. Go out, take your dog for a walk, but just get out in the sun, maybe without your headphones. Just listen to the birds, listen to the sound or the double-decker buses, and just enjoy the environment, but enjoy the sun while you're at it, because getting that sun absorption can really help with your hormonal production. And while you're at it, just earth. Take your shoes and socks off. We had a difficult time as soon as we landed. I needed to earth myself. Luckily, there's some earthing shoes here, but I wanted to earth myself. God, we went walking, I don't know, for about 30 minutes, trying to find some grass, you know, so I could earth myself, but I feel so much better. Now, you may call it a little bit woo-woo. It's a placebo effect, but I don't know if any of you have seen Clint Ober's movie or read his book, Earthing the movie. Phenomenal movie. And you can actually see the science of how earthing can work when you absorb the negative ions. Now, there's a way that you can hack that. I think earthing.com do have earthing mats. Now, I have one at my desk because I'm on a computer all the time. I'm getting a lot of EMF radiation, so I want to earth myself to get rid of a lot of that radiation so it can pass through me instead of penetrate in me. I'm sure you've seen the experiments, the tests that some biohackers have done online where they're holding the EMF reader and they're holding the phone and the reading is all the way up, but as soon as they take their shoes and socks off and stand on the grass, it goes down because it's penetrating through them. And that's what we obviously want to do. But the thing is, it's invisible. We don't see it, so we don't believe in it. Just play it on the safe side. That's what I'd say. Play it on the safe side. So try to get your sunlight. Actually, don't try. Get your sunlight exposure. Now, I do understand living in the UK, you're not going to get that sun all year round. So again, you can biohack your environment by having red light therapy. That's what I usually do in the winters. We live in Boise, Idaho. It's snowing half the time. I'm not going to go out and earth myself. There's 10 foot of snow out there. So I'll use an earthing mat, and I'll use my red light therapy panels during that time, okay? Now, what else do we have? Oh, yeah, and mitigating the artificial light. So we've talked about EMF exposure. Do you mitigate a lot of the artificial light? I should be wearing blue blockers here now because we've got a lot of artificial light here. But that's very important as well. The blue light will penetrate your retina and through your skin to take your cortisol levels up to tell you, hey, it's daylight. You need to be alert because you could get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, or you need to hunt for that saber-toothed tiger. But it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and we're getting penetrated by it, so we can't release melatonin. We can't lull ourselves to sleep. We cannot relax. So what do? We stay awake, and we wonder why our sleep score is terrible. We wonder why we're not functioning as we should. Thank you very much. And a lot of it comes from then. As Ben mentioned before, when do you focus on your sleep? From the time that you wake up. So get outside, expose yourself to the restorative red rays that you get from the sun, or biohack it from a red light panel to help with your sleep later on. And then again, block the artificial light. Now, in our house, we have red bulbs upstairs, so it looks like a brothel in the upstairs of our house. And we have the yellow bulbs downstairs. So we don't have that exposure anyway, but I always have my blue light blocking black glasses because sometimes we'll watch TV, sometimes I need to get on a computer, maybe I need to answer a message on my phone. So it's a very good idea to block it then. Usually during the day I'd have the yellow lens, and then in the evening I'd have the red lens. Sometimes if I'm working on my computer and I need to see colors, then I'll have the clear lens. But it's very important that you do block it. The one complaint that I have of my clients is their sleep. And I find it very, very difficult to get people to sleep earlier. However, they come to me to get them in shape, or they come to me to help reverse their biological age. But as soon as I tell them, you need to get in bed by 8, maybe 9 o'clock at the latest. Now, I understand people have different work schedules, family and whatnot, but that's what it takes. You think back to our ancestors, were they up at like 1 o'clock in the morning? No. After sunset, they're back to sleep. Or after the campfire has gone down, they're sleeping. That's our ancestral wisdom talking to us that we shouldn't change our environment. Because as I mentioned, our DNA hasn't. However, our health is declining rapidly. So we need to control it. Don't live a life that you will regret. You need to make those decisions right now, as I said, to heal your future as opposed to harm it. But again, this is something that is free, that you can start doing right now for free. A lot of these modalities are. You just need to ensure that you apply yourself. You can all sit here and be students of learning, but I encourage you to be students of application. Start applying yourself. It's Saturday. Is it Saturday? Yeah, don't wait till Monday. Start now. Start now. There's no next time. There's no Monday. It's only now time. All right, so questions. I was just given the board here. I don't have much time. By the way, I will be signing copies of my book at the stand G8. I can't remember the name of the stand. Can you remember it? Something Books. It's just at the bottom. Watkins. Thank you very much. At the bottom of the stairs here, I'll be signing copies of my book. So I don't mean to be rude. As soon as I finished here, I do have to down there, and I'll start signing books. And happy to answer a lot more questions down there as well if I don't get to them today. Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Kris. That was really, really good. Thank you.
Good
to see you in person as well. You're real. You spoke about the mold toxicity at the beginning, and you maybe glossed over the tests you can do to see what your mold situation is, because I think a lot of us have it, we don't know it. and then we don't know how to really deal with it properly and be effective. So I guess that's my question is, how do you know where you stand initially so you can start to do something positive about it?
Sure. Basically, what you're going to have to do, I don't know if there's any test. Does anybody know of any tests that are available online now? Maybe there are. Because what I was going to, pardon? Oh, Great Plains, Great Plains. Yeah, we have a Great Plains in the US as well, but that's not online based. You actually have to go there in person. But maybe there's an online version of it over here. But usually I'd suggest that you go to a functional practitioner that is experienced in that. That's what I did. And they'll put you through a mold toxicity test. Like I said, there's going to be various forms of those tests that they'll look at. They'll look at your stool, your urine, your hair, saliva, et cetera, et cetera. But because there's so many online tests that I've noticed this comes up, there seems to be online doctors everywhere now. Maybe there's an online version, but you'd see a functional practitioner and ask for the mold toxicity tests. Yes?
It was fascinating to hear about your previous career and athleticism. I was wondering, what's your biggest lesson from being an athlete and a bodybuilder that you've applied into business?
That I've applied to business is consistency and persistence. You know, because obviously if you're participating in any sport and you want to excel in it, you know, you have to do the things on the days that you don't want to do it. It doesn't mean that you're going to overtrain, but you have to be cognizant and be aware and be present. Like as I mentioned before, I know that I can't excel at one thing, so maybe I'll do a few things. Everybody's got a different personality, but if you think, okay, maybe I can do this, and this will help feed this other business empire that I've got, or the business idea or strategy that I have, then you can do several of those. So obviously all of mine are within the fitness industry. They feed each other, you know, they cross-pollinate. So that's what I do. And the same with, you know, I don't want my identity to be attached to one thing, and that's why I do endurance. That's why I do bodybuilding. That's why I like participating in various activities. It helps with mental stability, you know. Yeah.
Thank you for a really informative talk. Can you share a little bit more about the stem cell therapy that you've had? Is it the first time you've done it? What are the benefits that you're seeking? And how do you feel any different as a consequence of it?
Sure. So yes, I have had stem cells prior to this. I had stem cells in 2017, I believe. I went to Costa Rica for that. Was it Costa Rica? Colombia, sorry, I get mixed up. Went to Colombia to have stem cells, and the main reason why I had stem cells then is when I competed in one of my, I think it was in my third Ironman. About 5 weeks before, we were running around Central Park, and when I was doing my second lap, I was about 2 miles from the end. I was like, I could feel something happening with my knee, but I'm sure it'll be okay. And I carried on for the last couple of miles. And then when I stopped, I realized, wow, I'm limping. That's not good. So I had a decision to make. Do I just stop training in running? Or do I pull out the Ironman? I didn't pull out the Ironman. I continued. I didn't train, but I did the Ironman. But I had to stop at every single aid station in order to finish. So I had a slightly torn meniscus. So I didn't want to have surgery, so I went to Colombia and had stem cells, and about 6 months later, I felt amazing, felt absolutely phenomenal. And the reason why I had stem cells last year, and by the way, a lot of these injuries, people think, yeah, typical bodybuilder, I don't get, touch wood, I don't get injured in the gym. So when we were snowboarding last year, I ragdolled it, and I tore my tricep, I tore my supraspinatus, and I tore my meniscus. I only realized I tore my meniscus about 6 weeks ago when I had the MRI in Mexico. So I had stem cells there. Now these are umbilical stem cells. Now they're able to harvest those stem cells in other countries that you can't do here in the US. You can't do that in the UK. So instead of getting like 200 million stem cells, sometimes you could get like 200 million. But I know people such as, you know, Ben, who go to see Harry Adelson and they have, you know, great results. I prefer to go elsewhere and get a lot more and pay half the price. And what I like about the place that I just went to in Mexico as well, they had a hyperbaric oxygen chamber that's probably worth about close to $1 million. Everything's clinical grade with a PEMF. They have a compound pharmacy in-house, so they make the NAD that they have there, so that's within 2 weeks old, so that's stabilized, temperature controlled. Same with the stem cells. So that's what I had done. And that was, like I said, 5 or 6 weeks ago, so I'm yet to feel the proper efficacy. However, touch wood, I do feel so much better already. I just haven't put my body to the test, and neither will I for a little while yet. Because this is the mistake that I see with a lot of people that go and have stem cells. They go, oh, yeah, it didn't really work. I'm like, well, did you train like straight after? Oh, yeah, a couple of weeks after. The stem cells go where the trauma is. It'll localize where the trauma is. Now, if you go and create trauma because you've gone and trained chest or back or legs, now the stem cells will start to localize to those areas, so they won't no longer localize in an efficacious dose in the area that you want to fix. No worries. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're out of time already. Thank you ever so much. Really appreciate you.